Guys, it's Amanda again. I wanted to show you some of the resulting images from my little double exposure photo shoot, and also wanted to take you through something kind of interesting. I wanted to show you how to actually create a double exposure or multiple exposure in Photoshop, because what I realized is I really didn't like the double exposures that I created in camera. So here's some like bokeh shots that I took just randomly. Like I said, I do use manual focus so I can get them real fuzzy and blurry. This picture is not a double exposure, but I thought it was kind of cute because you could kind of see his little profile, and there's a little catch light in his eyes there. Let me see. That one, he's just looking up. All right, so here is one of the double exposures that I captured in camera. This is when the bokeh was kind of overlaid on the picture of my son. I really don't like this picture. I wouldn't choose to edit it or share it. There's no light in his eyes. It just kind of looks like he's just kind of, I don't know, this picture just doesn't do anything for me. Let's see. I took a few other ones. This is kind of a rad one where you can kind of see, like, that's kind of weird, you know. So that was another weird one that I took. And again, I don't like it. I would not share it or edit it. And then I took this one of my daughter. Again, similar kind of, you got some bokeh over here and then my daughter over here, but I don't really love these. The only picture I kind of like, and don't even love, but kind of like, is this one here of my son. And so what I thought I would do is, instead of using one of the double exposures in camera, I'm just going to take this into Photoshop and create a double exposure. And honestly, because my camera model doesn't give me any choice but to just take two perfect pictures in a row, which for me is pretty impossible, I think Photoshop is going to have to be the way that I go. So I'm going to go ahead and do some raw processing on this and get this kind of set up in Lightroom. As you can see, I haven't done anything to it. The white balance is right out of camera. I did have to bump up the exposure a ton because this is what it looked like straight out of camera. Oh yeah, that's what it looked like. That's at ISO 800, 1.8 at 1/200th of a second. So I'm gonna bump this bad boy up to like 3, which I hate doing. Wait till you see all the noise. So let me just play with this for a little bit, and then we'll talk about some other things. All right, let's talk a little bit about sharpening and luminance. Sharpening and luminance actually fight against each other. I think it's really important to understand the relationship between them. So sharpening obviously makes your image look a little bit crunchier. I think what it actually is doing is creating some black and white lines between different color variations. I'm not saying it very right. I'll get the right definition. But it's actually creating lines around the areas that you want to sharpen. So I think that's what's happening at the pixel level. Luminance smooths everything over. So these two work against each other. So you want to be careful to balance them. Very carefully. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to move my sharpening all the way down to 0. And the reason I'm doing that is because this image is so noisy that the more I sharpen it, the more noisy it's going to get. So I'm going to zoom in 3:1. You can see all this horrible noise. And again, this is at ISO 800. That's why I need a full frame camera here. So if I sharpen it just a little bit, you can see it just gets noisier, right? Like, that looks terrible. So I'm going to leave my sharpening at 0. And then for luminance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump that up pretty high. Do you see how that's smoothed out? I'm at 35 right now. I'm actually going to move to a shadowed part in the skin. I can also go up here, I think, and just tap. So you can see here, still kind of noisy, not too bad actually. I might be able to move that up a little bit more. So this is at luminance of 45, which is really high, and that's at 0. I just tapped it back to 0. Yeah, that looks terrible. So let's go back to 46. So that makes a big difference. That looks nice. But if I go back to his eyeball, so again, we're at luminance of 46. If I go ahead and move that back down, you can see it's a lot sharper, it's a lot crisper. So you need to have a balance here. So I'm gonna go back up. Again, I usually set my luminance on a shadowed part of the skin. That's where you're gonna see a lot of that noise come in. And then I'm also gonna see, gosh, it just looks really smooth through here, way too smooth for my liking. So I am gonna kind of notch that back a little bit. A little noise isn't gonna kill me here. So let's see. So that's with a luminance of 30. And that's with, there we go. And then you can see, so I'm not going to go up quite that high. Maybe I'll go to 25. Okay, so it's not too smooth. I don't want it to look too smooth. I don't like how that looks. So now let's look at his eyes. Okay. And so for sharpening, remember sharpening, especially on the skin, is creating noise. So I'm just going to sharpen a little bit. See, that's way too noisy. All right, so that's 15. It's none. So I'm just going to maybe go to like 15. That looks pretty good. All right, so you can see I've introduced some more noise here, but here's what I can do. I'm going to go ahead and press Z to zoom out. Do you see this masking right here? I want to mask out the sharpening that's occurring on his face and on the background, which is creating the noise. So I'm going to hit the Alt Option button on my Mac, and I'm going to take this all the way up to 100. Okay, so at 100, we're masking out, like in Photoshop, a black mask. We're masking out most of the picture. Sometimes I actually have it at 100. So I'm going to move this down so that only like right here. So I'm at 81, and at 81, let me put it back on. At 81 or 82, you can see that just the outline of his profile, his eyelashes, his eye, and a little bit of his ear are sharpened. So now what I've effectively done is I've sharpened the parts of the image that I want sharp, like his eye, but I've masked out all that sharpening which is being done on his skin because I don't need to add any more noise. So I like that. I think that's a good thing. So I'm going to zoom in real quick here. And again, I haven't added any more noise to his skin because I've fully masked all of that out, but I have added a little bit of sharpening on there. So this looks good. As far as the noise reduction, I think I might even go down a little bit further. He looks pretty smooth, and I don't need him looking like that smooth. So I'm not going to use any lens corrections in this picture at all. The main part of the subject is right in the middle of the frame, so I'm really not going to gain a lot by doing the profile corrections. So I'm just totally fine with it. Although I do like how this lights up a little. I don't like how his head looks like a cone in the corner of this image, so I might do something about that or just put some vignette on it so that you can't really see that. But I think that's all I'm going to do there. I mean, I could put a little vignette on it, we'll just see, but I also don't want to take away some of the light that I have here. All right, so this is all I'm going to do for this image, and then my bokeh shot is over here. And what I'm going to do for this image is not a whole lot. But I'm going to go ahead and maybe bump the exposure a little bit, give it a little bit more vibrance, a little more saturation like that. I'm fine with how the colors are. I don't need to sharpen it. I can make it a little luminance. That might actually help That's all I really need for that one. So now what I'm going to do is I've got down here in my photo roll, I've got my bokeh image selected, and I'm going to go ahead and hit Command and then select my other one. I'm going to right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Okay, so these layers have gone ahead and loaded up here for me in Photoshop. The top layer is the bokeh layer, and then the bottom layer is of my sun. And so now what I would suggest doing is play with the blend modes. You can certainly use screen, and it looks kind of like that. That's kind of interesting. I'm going to try lighten. I like that except for the bokeh, but we can mask all that out.
I think I like, what do I like better, screen or lighten? Ooh, yeah, definitely like lighten better here. What else might work? Let's see. I'm just going to play with some of these and see if any of them have an interesting effect. That's a little weird. Very weird. That's another interesting one.
Okay, so I think I like lighten the best. So I think you can use lighten or screen. I think I'm going to add a mask. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key while I click on my mask to bring up a black mask. And then I'm going to hit B for brush. I already have my white brush selected. My flow is 30%. That's pretty good. I'm going to use my right bracket key. Get me a little bit bigger here. And I think I'm just going to kind of brush in some of this wild bokeh here. We'll see how this looks. Actually, I'm going to hit Shift 6 to take my flow up to 60. It's just taking too long for it to show the way I want. Oh yeah, that must be from the tree branch. See some of these? It's kind of interesting. I mean, it's not awesome. I'm not loving this, you guys. Let's see. Yeah, well, yeah, for sake of demonstration purposes, that'll work. What I could also do if I wanted to be crazy is I could put on a transparent layer. I could go ahead and get my clone stamp out, flow of, let's say, 80. And I could go ahead and hit Alt Option and sample right there and like bring it up here and like do something weird up here. Oop. Oh, I got the line down there though, so you don't want to do that. Let me just real quick. Do something like that. Okay, so I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not like a great picture or anything. I'm actually going to do a little more cloning, like right in this area, just to get that out of there. Yeah, that line is a little bit weird, but whatever. Again, this is not a masterpiece by any means. Okay, so yeah, add a little bit of bokeh, no big deal. Okay, so I think that is how I'm going to work with this image. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to shift click group. I'm going to shift Alt Option Command E to make a stamp visible layer, and I'm going to go ahead and call that my background layer. And then I'm going to mess with it from there. Hope that was helpful. And now you definitely do not have to do a double exposure in camera because it's really hard to pull off. Now you can just create your own in Photoshop. Hope you enjoyed it.